Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Stanley Dyrector Show. Let's get the show on the road. My guest, Reginald D. Brown, a colleague of mine, a writer, screenwriter, and director. And I have to ask him, Reginald, how are you? What are you doing here?
I'm here to share some time with you and share memories and talk about film and television.
You know, that's a good idea. That's what this show is about. And I'd like to ask you, how did you get into this crazy, crazy business? Were you a relative of Cecil B. DeMille or somebody like that?
No, not really, but I would say my aunt Versia Starr McKinney kind of influenced me. In 1949, she's from Memphis, Tennessee. She was one of the first female black DJs in the South, along with Rufus Thomas and B.B. King. And she was a great writer, so if I got anything that was passed on to me, I got my writing ability from her.
Well, I mean, did you write when you were a little kid? Is that it?
No, I think writing came to me late. I didn't realize I could write. Because at one point I wanted to be an athlete because I played baseball and I ran track, but mainly I played baseball. But let me tell you this story. My father was in Vietnam. He went there from '67 to '68. When he came back with one of those wind-up, a Super 8 camera and a Sony Ampex sound recorder, and he taught me how to use it. Now, coincidentally, at the same time, my English teacher, I was a junior in high school, said instead of doing term papers, she wanted everyone to do an audiovisual project. So people were doing like slideshows, photojournalistic projects. And because I had the Super 8 camera, a friend and I decided to make a little short film. So we made a short film, and that was my project for that semester. And that kind of gave me the bug that I kind of wanted to do that. And I've always liked to work a camera, so I would say I always started with the camera because I feel I had an eye with the camera that I could capture things. But I was still an athlete, and I didn't really get into that till I went to college. I played baseball for a year, and then I broke my ankle. And there went the baseball career, so I started to figure out, well, what is it that I can also do? And that's when I realized that I wanted to be a cameraman. But let me roll back to the writing part.
Yeah, that I want to hear about, the writing part.
Another extracurricular activity I was involved in was I was in speech tournaments when I was in 9th and 10th grade, and I used to write my own speeches. So, but I never thought anything of that. You know, I didn't, but I guess that's where the writing, if you write your own speeches, you know, that's writing. But you know, when you're young, you don't realize the talent that you have because you're, like I said, I was trying to be a baseball player.
Right.
And my writing is what got me into college. You know, you had to write like a bio on yourself.
Yes.
And because, again, I was an athlete, I was a good student, but I was a lazy student because you know, you got caught up in the thing like I thought I was a superstar, so I only had like a C+ average. At the time, they had the Educational Opportunity Program where I was able to enter University of California, Irvine. But basically, I got in because I wrote a biography, and the strength of my writing got me into college.
Well, didn't you go to, what was it, the University of Irvine, was it?
Yeah, I went to UC Irvine. That's where I played baseball for a year, and I broke my ankle, and then I decided that I better get serious about what I want to do, so I majored in drama. And that's where I developed my writing again, because I used to write these little short plays while I was there. Then, after I graduated from UC Irvine, I was thinking about going to graduate school. I tried USC and I tried UCLA, tried to get in their cinema department. But at the time, you had to have a high GRE score, and in terms of the pool of competition, my GRE score, the graduate record exam, my scores weren't high enough. Then I found out that at San Francisco State, which had a great broadcast communication department and a film department, that you didn't have to take the GRE, but you had to write a paper. So again, my writing gets me into school. I wrote a 25-page paper on the image of the black man in film, and my writing got me into graduate school. So at this point, I'm beginning to think, well, I must can write a little bit because it's gotten me into college 2 times. Now, the thing that got me into the business,
Yeah,
more or
yeah,
less
yeah.
the carrot at the end of a stick,
Uh-huh.
is that while my second year in graduate school, a friend of mine, Sati Jamal, and we applied for an American Film Institute independent filmmaker grant. At this time, I'll give you a little bit of history of that. From 1968 to 1988, there was a 20-year program at the American Film Institute where they would they were funded by the National Endowment of the Arts. And they would fund 10 to 15 independent filmmakers, $10,000 to $15,000 to make a film. So we applied when I was my second year in graduate school, and luckily, fortunately, we got a grant of $10,000 to make a short story. So I used that as my master's thesis. That summer of 1978, we went to Brooklyn. We shot a short story.
Brooklyn, New York,
Brooklyn,
are you
New
talking
York.
about? Okay.
And the story starts in, it's like 4th Street and Pacific.
Okay.
Right.
Well, yeah, I'm from Brownsville,
Right.
Ocean Hill, I guess.
So I remember that because I wanted to be a cameraman, so I shot the film myself. And I remember this shot. It's like a tall building with a clock on it. And I pan down from the clock and I catch the father and the son on their bicycle on their journey on 4th Avenue. And then the bicycle ride is through Brooklyn to Coney Island. And the rest of the story takes place in Coney Island.
Wow.
And so that actually is the thing that got me into, I think maybe I can do this, because again, I wrote something that got me some money.
Right.
And
so that was actually like your first professional?
the first professional, because we had the budget. We had to try to do, on $10,000, we made a film that might have cost $100,000, but because we were in school, I was able to edit for free.
Yeah.
Get
cameras
for free. And then, just have friends be in the movie. And at the time, you didn't have no money to pay them. But, as long as we took people to Nathan's and got a hot dog and some chicken,
right.
we did fine.
Well, who were the filmmakers that inspired you when you were growing up?
I would say, I was born in the segregated South. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1952. So growing up, there weren't very many entertainment outlets that show positive images of African American people. At the time, I'd see like Amos and Andy, which wasn't very positive. Even though it was funny, it wasn't very positive.
Right.
But I saw the Nat King Cole show.
Oh, okay.
Right, so that's why I guess I've been around music, because I saw Nat King Cole and they had Ella Fitzgerald on, Sammy Davis Jr., and people like Frank Sinatra. So you get inundated with class and music. But in terms of wanting to be a filmmaker and story, I saw a film called Black Orpheus.
Oh, what a marvelous
Black Orpheus.
Brazilian film,
Brazilian
wasn't it?
film.
Yeah, sure.
And the thing about it, it was like, as I said, I didn't see very images of myself on television. And then when we did see the images, they were very negative, so you didn't have a good sense of yourself.
Right.
Now, to see a foreign film where there's people all different types of color, and there's this music track, I guess bossa nova.
Yeah.
And the people, it's in Rio de Janeiro.
Right.
And the first shot of the film is there's some kids dancing on the hill, and then the camera pans to where you see like the giant statue of Christ.
Right.
And you see all of the city alongside the shore.
Right.
And it was so visual, it just
Based Orpheus and Eurydice.
Yeah. And so it's mythology, and then you see the regular black folk, even though they were speaking in Spanish or Portuguese.
Portuguese, yeah.
It was just fascinating. It was something that whatever it was, I wasn't thinking about being a camera. I just wanted to be in a situation like that, carnival, celebration, spectacle, epic.
Right. I mean, you really are so involved with music. I understand that. You're involved with gospel singers too, and there was a place called Beale Street, and we have a little clip.
Yes.
Can you kind of give us a preamble on?
Okay, what happened, again, my writing led to something positive. Right after I got to graduate school, there was a program at WNET 13 in New York they had something called the nonfiction TV series, of which they were funded by the Ford Foundation, the National Endowment of the Arts, and Corporation for Public Broadcast. I had submitted a proposal, and I got accepted as a producer to produce, write, and direct a documentary on Beale Street in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, Beale Street is the center of black culture in the South before Harlem, and the legendary birthplace of the blues. And if we were to look at the clip now, you see a little bit of what I'm talking about.
Well, Steve Krieger, when you're ready, we're ready.
I first came to Beale Street in 1934, and Beale Street was in its heyday. All the movie theaters and the gambling halls and things of that type.
In the 20s and 30s, Beale Street was the mecca for blues and jazz musicians. A prominent band leader on Beale Street was Maurice Holbert. Holbert, a dance instructor and promoter, booked some of the best jazz musicians in the country from his Appomattox Club.
I was there in the early 30s. I booked Louis Armstrong, first one to book Louis Armstrong in the city of Memphis. I had a hard time getting him here, but we finally did. And I played him in the Palace Theater for 3 days and nights.
Just because my teeth are pretty, oh, just because I always wear a smile, like to dress up in the lady's eyes.
And after he finished his performance at the theater, he would come to my dance hall at the time. It was called the Appomattox Club. And most of the people from the theater would come up to my dance hall to dance to Louis' music. Did real well there. And one of the performers, another performer that's come now, Ethel Waters, she was a very, very close friend of mine.
Since my man and I ain't together, keeps raining all the time.
And when she performed at the Palace Theater, when she leave the theater, she would come up to my dance hall and people would follow her up there. And we got along real well.
Young and old, fall for it. Oh, they go for it. On the floor, talk more for hot and
I was the manager of the Elks Club. We booked Cab Calloway. So that is part of some of the entertainment and promotions that I did down through the years.
Reggie, I have to ask you, how long did this project take you?
It took about 18 months from the point of, and another quick story. When I applied, I sent, Channel 13 sent, you know, they have regions where judges pick on stuff. Channel 13 sent 13 papers out to Region 13. I get a call on December 13th telling me that they lost my application with the other people's applications,
Oh,
right?
boy.
So I'm thinking, boy, I'm working at Channel 13 and stuff isn't working. You know, if you're superstitious, 13 wasn't happening. All right, now what happens in January of the following year, I applied for it in 1980. So December of 1980, December 13th, I get a call, they lost everything. and they asked me to resubmit. So luckily I had another print of the homecoming piece I did for the American Film Institute, and a separate proposal I made a copy of. And I sent it off, but I was just thinking the worst. But then I get a call January 19th, 1981, saying that they were going to fund me. So luckily, what happened, usually there's a series of readers, two groups that look at your proposal and sign off on it before it gets to the staff. Because my work got lost, it went straight to the staff who make the decision. Mm-hmm. So when they saw it, they said, this is a great idea. So they funded me without having to go through the circles of, some people don't really know what the project is about. So they say, oh no, nobody's interested in it. Well, the people who make the decisions were interested in it, and I was able to do that. So I got funding. The film cost about $98,000. Originally, I applied for a half-hour film, but I thought this could be an hour, so I made our film on money that's supposed to be used for half an hour. Mm-hmm. I just used all my resources to make that work. So it took about 18 months. We spent about a year in Memphis shooting off and on, and then it took us 9 months to edit.
Wow, that is a long project, and it ran on...
It ran on national PBS in the fall of 1982. And then I also was able to license it to London Weekend Television in London. It ran there from 1983 to 1985.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, there's public television, and then there's also sponsored television, I guess you might say, by big companies, and the CBS, NBC, ABC.
Right.
But what's an easier route? It seems like I've heard that when you apply for these grants, it's like a year and a day to kind of fulfill your dreams if they ever do get fulfilled. Usually they're rejected.
Well, yeah, I think my situation is that it was the right time when in my early career of applying for grants. Because the late 70s, they had grants from, they used to have the Department of Education used to give out grants for media projects. Because I know filmmakers like Tony Brown Journal, St. Clair Bourne, and also there's a man named Tapa Carew.
I've heard of
Tapa Carew.
Sure.
And even the actress, Denise Nicholas, she used to have a production company, and they were getting government grants to do projects.
Right.
And then Reagan got into office, and immediately they started cutting back on, I remember on the funds, because I think at one point the National Endowment budget was like $300 to $350 million.
Right.
They just started cutting it and cutting it and cutting it, where it wasn't that easy for just an artist to apply for grants. Now, in each state, there's also a state agency of the arts. So there's funding from DC, and they distribute it among the 50 states. So besides trying to get a national grant, you can also get a grant from like California Arts.
Right.
But that was if you were just a norm. You can get grants from like $10,000 to $20,000. Now they've kind of changed the criteria, where you almost have to be a big-time producer to get funding. And then there's some political stigmas attached with, there's more conservatism here,
right.
basically through the Republican administrations.
Right, but the thing is, though, you could do the same effort and go to a big, like CBS or NBC, or that. Wouldn't it be a lot easier, and there's a bigger payoff?
Well, it depends. Well, the main thing is, when you do like a documentary, you're doing something that's personal.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily meet the criteria for popular.
Okay, I got it.
Right.
Okay, but wait, Stan here got $50 million.
Right.
And he's saying to you, Reginald D. Brown, what kind of a movie would you make me for $50 million? Or what, or maybe any project for $50 million.
Okay, now if I had $50 million, I'd have to take pause. Because the first thing that meant that a gift was given to me. And for this gift to benefit me, I must share with other people. So I would maybe take 10% of it and set up a fund for younger people who are trying to do things. So that way I'm reaching back and I pull forward. Then I take my $40 million to Dubai and buy me up some property. And then make some movies, because I understand now that Paris used to be the center for things in Europe, and that Paris is now moving, or I guess an aspect of Paris is now in Dubai, because they're creating film studios and television facilities, and people are going there doing commercials and feature films.
Right.
You know,
right,
so I says,
right.
if I'm going to make me a movie, I go to Dubai and tax-free.
Yeah, but it better be clean, on the line.
On the
otherwise,
line.
Chop, chop.
Exactly.
But listen, you know, you are also a teacher, which we have not spoken about, and you kind of mentor.
Yeah. As a young man who's trying to get into business, you try to create a relationship with someone who has a lot of wisdom and experience to maybe guide you, give you some advice, so that you don't, it doesn't take you so long on your journey, or that you can avoid some of the bumps and the obstacles. When I was younger, I had two mentors. There was Clarence Muse, who was a veteran actor, and I met him when he was like 85 and I was 20. And then I had another friend, his name was Carlton Moss, and I met him when he was 60. And just my experience from them about reaching back, it made me always want to find a mentor, because because they were older. As I got older, you know, they passed, and I was at an age where I didn't have my mentors anymore. So I was always looking for a mentor, until one day I looked up and found out I had become the mentor. Oh. You know, so then I began to say that it's time for me to reach back. So that's why I teach school, because on one hand, it keeps me abreast of how young people think, and it keeps me young.
Well,
You know.
how do you teach filmmaking to younger people? I mean, isn't it you have talent or you don't have talent?
Well, I'm a director, and the role of a director is, if you can't teach it, how can you direct people? So on the other hand, as I teach, I'm practicing my skill.
Well, wait. Clue me in. Which hat do you prefer? The writer hat or the director hat?
Well, I think it's all together, because you know, as an independent filmmaker, sometimes you can't. Well, I wouldn't get any money unless I was able to write. Okay. And I'm a director, so I'm not going to direct any project unless I can write to get the money to direct the project. So I think I have a hat that says write direct.
So do you get a big, obviously you get a big kick out of directing kids. I mean, what do they bring to you? What does a young, aspiring filmmaker bring to the table?
They bring a passion. I mean, like for instance, I've been fortunate enough to teach at 3 schools here in the greater Los Angeles area. I teach at Los Angeles Southwest College, where it's a majority Black and Latino in a low-income area. In the summer, I teach in the Bill Cosby Summer Film Institute at USC. And that's, again, pulling from a pool of kids who are part of the Neighborhood Academic Initiative at Fauché Learning Center and Manual Arts. And these are young people who come, you know, they live, again, in a low-income situation, haven't been exposed to things, but they come with ideas, fresh ideas. And it's just about giving them a tool, like if they were a musician, and but they didn't have a flute, they didn't have a drum set, they didn't have access to piano. You give them the tools to create, then they come up with their expression. So then I'm working with kids who, they're living life and they understand story, but they don't know how to express themselves. So you teach them how to work a digital camera, tell them about story, have them go out and shoot stuff, and then come back and we show them how to edit. And you'd be surprised of the films that they make. And you see that there's a generation of those who want to do that, if they can come out here and give you good story.
Well, I mean, young kids, are their thoughts more to, like, Shakespearean love?
Well, this is funny that you mentioned that. In the summer, the kids are, they're age 14 to 16. Uh-huh. And at this point in their life journey, they haven't had heartbreak or different relationships. They're still at the age where romance is fresh, and the first time you met someone, falling in love the first time is a feeling that as we get older, we're always trying to get again. It's like an addiction. If you're a romantic, if you love being in love with love, it's being in love that first time. And a lot of the kids, the first little films they would make had to deal with those kind of relationships.
Really? How about classical music? Does that enter into your filmmaking?
Oh yeah. Part of the thing at the SC, and the Bill Cosby Summer Film Institute, is that we'll have them go out and shoot something that deals with inanimate objects like waterfalls, trees. Well, not that a tree isn't inanimate, but things that are not human without dialogue. And then we want them to pull some music from some classical music and cut your pictures to that, so they can get a sense of how powerful music works with your visual. I mean, it's the juxtaposition of those things.
Do you know that we're on our way out?
Are
My
we?
wonderful guest,
That fast?
Reginald
Wow.
D. Brown, screenwriter, director, also
All right.
producer.
Thank
What
you.
about the gospel aspects?
Oh, well, that was I used to do the gospel music with Jeff Majors. I wrote 22 episodes, but now I'm doing a documentary called Witness to a Dream about Tom Sturgis, the son of Preston Sturgis, the writer-director.
Great filmmaker,
who-
Sullivan's Travels.
Yeah, who has in fact, that clip is in the film too. He has a book coming out called Parking Lot Rules for Children, to Raise Children, and we're finishing up the documentary about him called Witness to a Dream, to bounce off each other, and we should be finished by May.
You know, I have a script under the table.
I'll take
I was
it with
thinking you'd be the producer.
That's
You
right.
Make
We
me
could do
a
that.
star, maybe.
We could do that.
Okay.